Hello and welcome to Hello and welcome to episode 71 of Nintendo Therapy, a show about the latest Nintendo news and rumors, as well as a celebration of all of the things Nintendo. My name is Kevin, and with me this week in Flower Bud Village to talk about the Nintendo Direct show, Mega Man on NSO, and farming on the go is Harrison.
Hey, Kevin, welcome back and happy to be here.
Yeah, and as we are sitting in the shadow of the Nintendo Direct looming yet again, I wanted to throw in another prediction over last week, something that I don't remember coming up when we did our Direct predictions. I think Metroid Zero Mission coming to NSO is a pretty good. It's got pretty good chance of showing up there.
Mission
The remake of the first Metroid game, yeah.
to the first Metro game. I'm so sorry, Kevin. We had a connection issue. I paused there.
Oh, okay. No, sorry. Yeah. So I said, I think on top of all the things we predicted in last week's Nintendo Direct stuff, after recording, I was like, oh, I should have brought up Zero Mission coming to Nintendo Switch Online, the Game Boy Advance channel, because that's something that I'm pretty sure Nintendo has admitted is coming eventually when they had that screenshot of like all the games they plan to put on there. And it's one of the ones we still haven't seen yet. So that's my prediction.
No further predictions. I'm a bit shocked that we got this far and there's no direct. I thought I was like almost for sure that we'd be on here this week talking about everything that we saw from the direct last week.
Well, there were two additional rumors if we want to go out of our traditional order is two additional rumors are one is that the direct is going to be on the 18th because I don't know if you saw this, I guess the Among Us website made some sort of update that they immediately took down which indicated that a new trailer was dropping on the 18th. So people are thinking that's related to the direct. And I guess Nintendo Switch is scheduled for maintenance on the 17th, so they could be loading up the direct on the 18th there. So that rumor was in there. And then also another thing I keep seeing people talking about, and this is one I can't trace the source of, but I've seen a lot of people this week talking about a Star Fox. What was that GameCube Star Fox game? Not Star Fox Adventure. The other one. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Star Fox.
Assault.
You didn't put
That's
it in
what
here,
it is. Yeah, Star Fox Assault. I keep seeing people talk about that getting a remake, which would be an interesting choice. I wonder if they would choose that over Adventures. I think Adventures is the more well-known game, so I wonder if there's some sort of rare red tape holding that game up because it was developed by them.
I don't know any about that, but I do like our first rumor. I mean, I like that one also. I haven't heard that one yet. More Star Fox.
Star Fox I see you had the. I didn't even see you added the direct date into the rumors. Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. Yes. So the Among Us rumor I added because I just liked it. They added the trailer or whatever we call it to their website and then took it down, which a lot of people are saying like who cares, but I'm saying that it could be something because they've shown Among Us trailers in Nintendo Directs. I think maybe it was the last June one as well. And the last year's Direct was on June 21st, which is the latest a June Direct has ever been. Most likely because there's no E3. So it would not be surprising that they waited, roughly 2 weeks after Summer Game Fest to have this presentation. So, and that's also on a Tuesday. Perfect. I mean, I like it.
Yeah. We'll have to just wait and see like everyone else.
Yeah. And then there'll be like more Among Us news and I'll be like, like, like playing games with people. I don't know about that. you know. Um,
If they drop that Star Fox game, though, that's one I'll definitely pick up, depending on the price point, because it's it's a game I've always kind of been interested in. I played Adventures, never played any Star Fox games after Adventure, and it's like I've heard good things now. I mean, nostalgia is starting to peak for the GameCube era, so there's so many of these things now that are getting good word of mouth on the internet that are games that generation grew up with, that I was sort of like in my I'm not playing video games right now phase. I think that phase was like end of GameCube to beginning of Wii. I'm starting to narrow down where my blind spot is for Nintendo, and it's about there, like halfway into the GameCube end of life, halfway into the Nintendo Wii beginning of life was my blind spot.
yeah, I was like you're a few years older than me, so mine is most like I think it's the same. It's just like 4 or 5 years after that because like I wasn't playing games after I finished college like 2012. Um I certainly wasn't playing that much when I went to grad school in like 2015. But I
Mhm.
picked it up a lot when Switch came out. Uh so so that would be mine.
Yeah, I think
Good
a lot
news,
of
my
people
blind
stop
spot was Wii
around
U.
then because you're in college, you meet new people, you're going out more. I think you're not staying at home as much in college. There's
No
things to
time.
do, so like you're not at home playing video games as much. And then when you finally get settled, you come back to them.
Yeah, there was just no real time at some point, and especially like when I was in grad school, I was working full time.
Hmm.
I wasn't playing game like I just wasn't playing games for 2 years.
Yeah.
Just during that, and if I was, it was it was Animal Crossing New Leaf. I remember in college, like our two games were like Smash Brothers. Wait, what's the Wii one?
Um.
Brawl.
Yes.
Is that we? Yeah,
Yeah.
Brawl, and we got really into WarioWare because it's just like a ridiculous uh party social game, which will come up in our discussion in just a little bit later, actually.
Well, something that definitely kept me out too was, you remember how rare it was to get a Nintendo Wii when they first launched? Like they were hard to get. They couldn't keep them in stock in stores, and I remember being one of those people calling the stores saying like, "Oh, when does your delivery arrive? Like when are you getting any Nintendo Wii's in?" Like trying to hunt one down, and that sort of killed it all for me because I think it took me like a full like 2 years before I wound up actually getting a Nintendo Wii, and I was behind at that point.
Did you have a PS2?
Oh yeah, that's well, one of my favorite gaming memories is the fact that I was way ahead of the curve on the PS2. My reserve ticket number at I think it was Funco Land at the time, um was I had number 2. I was the second person at my store to reserve a PlayStation 2. So I had tag number 2 for PlayStation 2. And I'll always remember that. I was like one of the first ones to get it. I was so hyped for that.
I felt like I was, and this is not how it was, but at the time, it felt like I was the only one that didn't have one when it came out. Um, and I never had a PlayStation system up to that point when PS2 did come out.
I'm trying to think of what I
Because
had that first year. Like what was my first? I know I bought Armored Core 2 in the beginning. There was a game called Zone of Enders that a lot of people bought because it had the Metal Gear Solid demo on it. I think that was early on. And oh, The Bouncer. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Like a lot of people bought that because it was the first SquareSoft game they put on the PlayStation 2. So a lot of people are like, I'm going to buy this to see what Final Fantasy is going to look like. You know what I mean?
right, right. But it was $300 when it came out, right?
Yeah.
So I think I was looking at that because I was 10 years old,
Oh
not
yeah. I
working
was
or anything.
I was a little
Like,
older. I
yeah.
had my own money.
Yeah, right. And that was my favorite part about like that generation was that when I was like 12, 13 years old, I was like doing like little jobs for $20 a week or something, like neighbors' dogs, mowing lawns, things like that. Um, so so yeah, but I remember looking at it thinking like $300, like, wait, like that's just like way too much. And then GameCube came out, and I was able to get one of those. I can't remember how difficult those were originally, but I guess not.
Those were not
Yeah.
hard to get. GameCube was not a hard system to get. I think the
I guess I
Nintendo
was thinking
Wii.
about.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you said Wii. I was thinking about PS3 and Wii. I was like,
Oh, okay.
I'm just jumping around the generations today. We're just podcasting. We're just we're
Yeah,
just we're
Wii
just
was the
we're just
first system I had a hard time getting, and I think for the most part, the Nintendo Wii and the PlayStation 5 are the only systems I've ever had a hard time getting. I'm usually pretty good at reserving stuff ahead of time. Like the Nintendo Switch, I was there day one. I don't know if I told the story on the podcast. I took a week off of work for the Nintendo Switch launch. I took my vacation that week so I could play Breath of the Wild that whole week. And I got there as soon as the store opened, pick up my Switch, came home, got to work. um so yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I swear those are like like releases like that. Did you see anyone else at the store that day, or was it like walk in, pick it
No,
up?
there was definitely a line, and about like I remember a little bit into the line, the person announcing something like, "Okay, we are out of systems for anyone who does not have a reserve ticket. Our only systems left are for people with reserve tickets." So, I definitely remember that.
And you were like, bye,
And
see ya.
I got the last one that they had that was the Joy-Cons that are the classic blue and red, the mismatched Joy-Cons, which is the
Mhm.
one I picked. I think most people were getting the ones that were all black.
I
And
I
yeah.
had I had the red and blue originally, and then I remember a lot of people had the like the gray ones. I think were like the ones I was always seeing. Um, yeah, I think that's something that video games need to figure out, because it's pretty clear to me that a lot of gamers desire having those kind of experiences together. Like recently with that Stardew update, that 1.6 update, like when it was getting ready to come out, I was like hanging out on Discord, hanging out on Reddit, and I was like, man, this is the closest thing I felt to like a midnight release of a game where you're like surrounded by people, doing the same thing,
Mhm.
and it's the closest thing I felt in so long, and it was a lot of fun just to kind of experience it at the same time. Which is why I think, like sports are always going to be popular, you know?
Mhm. Good connection. um
Yeah.
so I don't really have a segue into this other news item we have from this week, but it's something I kind of wanted to talk about. Is this happened like literally right after we finished recording last week? Was they added the Mega Man games to Switch Online, which is crazy because they don't usually theme it like that. They don't usually add like 5 games from one series to Switch Online all at the same time. They'll add like a Super Nintendo and Game Boy version or something, but not like I don't think they've done this before. Um, and it's fun. It's funny that like I don't think anybody predicted these coming. You know what I mean? I never saw any rumors or anything hinting that these were going to come. I've seen a few people asking online like things like, "Oh, why didn't the Super Nintendo games come, or why didn't we get the NES Mega Man games?" And it's like, well, I don't know if they just don't know this, but we're not going to get those because they're selling those on the eShop as a collection. So they want you to buy the collection. That's the reason. And it's a good collection. I have it. They have one for the Mega Man X games and for the Mega Man X games. That's where Mega Man snowboards. um,
Right.
but like you know what I'm saying. Yeah, they've got both collections on there, so we're not going to see those on Switch Online, I don't think.
I have I have very little memory of playing the first few, and I'm interested in seeing like I think if it comes up in the randomizer, we might need to do like 1, 2, and 3, and then do like 4 and 5. I don't know if we can do 5 in 1 week. Um, but we'll figure it out when it gets there. Watching gameplay the last few days, some of these games look rough. Just like
I for
the old.
sure owned the first one and the third one. I don't think I had Mega Man 2 on Game Boy, but definite core memories of playing those in the car, like waiting for my mom to like go into a store real quick or like, pop in and see my pick up something from my grandmother or something. Like just definitely remember playing my Game Boy in the passenger seat of my mom's car and playing those Mega Man games.
I remember playing. I don't think I've played like the like 4 and 5, but yeah, like looking at them now, it's like that older Game Boy generation where some of the older ones look pretty rough. They look pretty rough. Um, and apparently 5 is the only one that has new bosses that aren't in the original Nintendo games, which I think
Yeah.
is
So
quite
they don't
strange.
the Game Boy games don't follow. It's not like sometimes how they just make the Game Boy version a reduced version of the NES one. It's the Game Boy Mega Man games are like a separate timeline. They have their own story. It's completely unrelated to the NES Mega Man. It's the Mega Man multiverse. Which there's the Mega Man Legends timeline, there's the Mega Man Battle Network timeline. I guess Mega Man X is technically in the same timeline as classic Mega Man, but anyway, the Game Boy ones, they're their own thing. They're completely separate, and it's its own world. So it's funny that it took them until the fifth game to decide, hey, since these aren't connected, we could put our own Robot Masters in here. But I guess I don't know. There was something easier about reusing the designs.
I'll be interested in trying out, 4 and 5, just to see like how the direction kind of changed just in that last one. It seems like very different. I was trying to think of like a comparison, whether it's like a movie series or a game series where like at the end they just tried doing something like very different, or they just tried adding just different like new characters, new antagonists, or something.
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing. I have nothing, but I am excited to try it out. I think I was looking through. This is the most games we've seen added at one time, I think,
Yeah, I could see that because
as far
I
back as I
they've
can see.
definitely done at least four before, but obviously this is five games, so could be.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Like you can't play all 5 at one time, but more is better. Like if there's always games on there that you have no time to play, it's better than not having enough games.
Speaking of not having time to play, I finally got around to starting Thousand Year Door this week. Did you end up picking that game up? I don't remember.
No, I'm gonna play it. I know I'm going to play it. It might be on the next Switch though. like I don't know if I'm getting to this game in 2024.
Did you see
Um,
the theory online about the Nintendo Switch successor's controller based around Thousand Year Door?
no, what's that?
So because you remember we talked about before how they had seen in the coding that the game has 4K capabilities even though the Switch does not have 4K capabilities. So they're looking at all these other aspects of like maybe there's something else Nintendo did here where they were thinking forward to the fact that people will be playing this on the new Switch as well. And one thing they've come up with is a lot of the actions that are linked to certain buttons in the the way they display it on the screen, it's color coded, even though no Nintendo Switch controller so far has this color code. Like the Y button has like a distinct green look
Right.
when it's telling you to use Y. I think A has blue, and it could be nothing, could be something, but there are people speculating that like maybe this is a preview of like what the new controller is going to look like. Maybe it'll have this color scheme.
That that would be cool, but it's just colors though. I mean, you can. I
Yeah.
mean, controllers are all different colors. So I
Yeah.
mean,
It's just
I
something I
I,
saw
I
this week that I thought was interesting.
yeah. I mean, I like it. Like if I could like get a Switch successor that have Joy Cons that are like purple and have like the colored like GameCube scheme. I mean, I would think that's cool. I have it. It's colors, so I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like,
I guess the reason it stands out is that those it's different than how it looked on the GameCube. So when they gave you these tutorials on the GameCube, the button on screen obviously looked more like a GameCube controller. And now here they
right.
clearly made a design choice to change it to these. So people are just speculating as to why they would choose this design over one that looks like a Switch controller, for example.
I like it. I mean, I like it, and I love hearing any news about anything related to controllers and Joy Cons because yeah, I'm about done. Like after so many years, and I use Joy Cons pretty much all the time. Uh, I'm like ready to move on when I play some games. So I hope so. And that's going to come up in our matchup here pretty soon. Uh, yeah. So what else? Like initial thoughts on Thousand Year Door. What else?
I'm only a few hours in, like literally, like I think 3 hours, because was only able to play it one day, and every other time I've been able to play video games, I've only had a few minutes here and there. So I've been playing Animal Crossing because that's a game you can play for a couple of minutes and put it down. But this weekend, I think I'm going to dive deep into Thousand Year Door. I finally have a day where I have nothing planned, so I can play some games. And my initial thoughts are so I'm coming off of playing Metroid Dread. So one thing that I'm feeling playing this game, and I know it's a sign of just how video games were at the time, and some games still kind of have this, is I feel like that first hour is way too tutorial heavy. And it does give you the option to skip some stuff, but I never do because I'm afraid I might miss something that like I wouldn't figure out. So I always watch like how it teaches you how to use the battle system and stuff. And I feel like when I was playing Metroid Dread, that's a game where you'd gain a new ability and then they let you use that new ability for like 15, 20 minutes before you learn another ability. And like games are so much better that way, whereas this is very front loaded in like, let me teach you how to do this. Okay, now this, now this, now this, now this. And it's like, I haven't even really used the last thing you taught me much yet. Let me use that. So I know this is a beloved game and I might catch flack for this, but I think they could have spaced out some of the stuff they teach you or taught it in one lesson and then put you in an area where you use it all. One or the other.
Would it be better? And I haven't played this game, so I don't know. Would it be better if like there is more self-discovery, like if you discovered more things and then you tried them out on your own and then you learned about them?
Well, I'll tell
Because
you what I prefer, and games just flat out don't do this anymore, is I feel like this died with the Super Nintendo, is I loved when games would just have on the start menu a tutorial area. and they said they basically the game didn't teach you anything if you went to start game. That part doesn't teach you nothing. They expect you to go to tutorial if you want to learn how to play, and then they would have like a little tutorial thing. And there were a few games I can even remember as far as the PlayStation 2 having that, but it's pretty much gone at this point. And I wish they would bring tutorial back because I don't know, I feel like that's a better way to do it. If I'm returning to this game that I've played 100 times, I don't need to sit through the part where it teaches you ever again.
Yeah. I mean, this has come up in discussions of plenty of other Nintendo games. I think this outside of Metroid, it's hard to say which Nintendo games they do correctly for the beginning parts. Because I've
I
always
think
thought there's that.
Zelda's a very hit and miss on this. There are some Zelda games that are good at it. Obviously, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are very recent examples of they give you an ability and nothing is forcing you to go to where they get. I know you talked one podcast about wanting to skip the Sky Island, the
Sure,
was it the Great Plateau? But that's sort of a
sure.
different thing. At least when you're doing the Great Plateau, it's not one shrine after another of text learning how to use an ability. It's like they give you one, they let you wander around the island and use it until you decide to go learn the next one. So that one's pretty good. But then there's also like I always come back to this for a game that is so highly regarded. Ocarina of Time is so annoying to constantly have to learn how to open a door every time I start a new file. So so yeah, they're hit and miss on Zelda. Um
Right, right. And with Zelda, like when we had that discussion of Breath of the Wild, I was just offering like my idea of a solution. Like once you finish the game once, give an option to skip it. Give an option to make your first location random. You get all of your runes. Maybe you get a warm doublet, or hey, maybe you just spawn in an area that's really bad and you have to reset the game or try it out.
Well, here's a way to
But
keep it
yeah,
topical too. Luigi's Mansion 2 is coming out soon, and the re-release anyway. And Luigi's Mansion 2 is a game that is heavily criticized for EGAD constantly interrupting you on your missions to tell you stuff and teach you things. So that's something they improved for Luigi's Mansion 3, I feel like. So hopefully on the remake, they find some way to find a better balance of that. Otherwise, that series is going to be taking a step back as far as this goes.
right. But yeah, and then there's just other games like I really enjoyed Legends Arceus, but I dread thinking about going back and replaying it because there's so much text and it just takes so long to get through. I don't want to like go through all of that again just to finish the game and get back to where I was. So I wish those things were different because games that have that self discovery, games that games that don't force you to do things like that, like games that respect your time, which is going to come up in our spotlight today, by the way. M- my only other uh news thing was I saw Nintendo drop support for Twitter, which is the last gaming console to do so. Microsoft and PlayStation dropped it sometime in 2023. And the only feature it had was that you could upload your screenshots straight to Twitter. And
You
it
could
wasn't
do
even
little
that
video
great to
clips
begin
too,
with.
but yeah, basically the same thing.
Or yeah, and videos, like video screenshots, whatever. Uh, but it was a pretty small feature. Apparently, it wasn't used very much. And also, apparently, the API costs on Twitter have gone up like 500% this past year. So
Ooh.
it costs like $200,000 a month
Well,
for
that's why
that service.
Nintendo, when you get the Switch 2 out there, when you had the Wii U, that was one of the things the Wii U did right, is it basically had its own little Twitter built in. Like Nintendo, build your own little social media inside the system. I liked that. Do that again.
Yeah. Or just like give us more support for like actual social media that we can use. Like, hey, give us Discord support on the next system. Like we're talking on Discord right now. Give
Yeah.
us Discord support. But yeah, like I just wish I wish I could come on here and say Nintendo did the right thing, getting away from Twitter or X, whatever, because of all the toxicity and Elon. But in reality, it's a very expensive service they don't use. So it has to do with money, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see that on the next system.
So leaving Twitter
Also,
was not a mistake, but Nintendo has made some mistakes in the past, and that is why we're here to talk about their biggest mistakes in a tournament that we've been putting together. And this week's matchup for Nintendo's biggest mistakes, as we said last week, is the motion controls versus them breaking their partnership with Sony and the PlayStation and basically creating their own biggest competition. So the Sony thing we've kind of talked about before when that bracket was in the first round. Let's talk about motion controls a little bit. So basically this is on the list because when I made a list of Nintendo's biggest mistakes, I scoured the internet to see what lots of people. There are a lot of threads on Reddit and Twitter and Facebook groups and things like that where people have asked this question: what do you think is Nintendo's biggest mistake? And every single time I saw constantly mentioned motion controls in some way. We're kind of lumping it all together here, but like people talk about the motion controls in Skyward Sword, or or the fact that the Nintendo Wii, because it was a motion control system, wasn't really an advancement. Like the Nintendo Wii is not a really big step forward from the GameCube technology wise, but they wanted their motion controls, so they sacrificed having a more powerful system to focus on that. And yeah, so that is basically, should they have gone in that direction, I guess, the argument versus the PlayStation fiasco with Sony. What are your thoughts, Harrison?
I'll start by sorry, getting my notes here. I'll start by kind of going over PlayStation because that's the one that was up in the first round.
Yeah.
Uh, um, I mentioned with PlayStation that I think out of all of the 14, all of the 16 that are on our list, this one is the biggest what if as far as what could have happened. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, like, it's realistic to say that, let's say Sony and Nintendo they retained having a good relationship. It's realistic to say that everything remained the same, but Sony and Nintendo partnered to develop more games together. PlayStation would come out, everything remained the same. But on the other end, we could say that if Nintendo retained again a good relationship with Sony, what does that mean for Dreamcast? Like, does Dreamcast make it longer? Does Xbox come out, or does Xbox come out in the time that it does? Does PlayStation come out in the time that it does? Does PlayStation never come out? So, in my
Here's
opinion,
here's my alternate reality. Sorry, just
yeah,
to
go
jump in.
ahead.
Here's what I think would have happened, and obviously it's all speculation. Nobody knows. I think had Nintendo stuck with Sony and released the PlayStation, which again, just want to just want to clarify something. People constantly make this mistake. The PlayStation that Nintendo was making was not a Sega CD for the Super Nintendo. It was going to be its own standalone system that played Super Nintendo games, but also played these CD-based games. So it wasn't like an add-on. That was a different thing they were working on at some point, but another story altogether. Anyway, so they released the PlayStation. It's a system that plays Super Nintendo games and these CD-based games. I think I think Dreamcast is more successful than it was because it doesn't have the PlayStation as competition. And as far as Microsoft goes, I think Microsoft ends up partnering with Sega since they did. I've seen people go as far as say the first Xbox is basically the Dreamcast 2 because they had so much Sega support. So yeah, I don't think we see Xbox launch a system. They might. Yeah, I'm on the fence about that one, but I definitely think it means the Dreamcast does better, and we might even get one more Sega system before. I think it was inevitable that they were going to end up going and just becoming software developers. I don't think they were going to make it much past one more system after the Dreamcast anyway. Um, and I think PlayStation might have even still put out their own system after this. I think what could have happened is they could have sold a lot of these things and said, "Hey, we can make our own system and not have to rely on Nintendo," because Nintendo would have been policing the hell out of it. And and that was part of the disagreement in the first place was Nintendo wanted to have absolute control and Sony was like, "No, we want control over the CD-based games," and that's what ended up making the partnership fall apart. So they eventually, I think, would have just been like, well, now that we've seen we can do this, let's put out our own system where we don't have to ask Nintendo permission. And I think it would have been a very similar gamescape, but it would have like been almost like a generation delayed.
Right. I agree with you on all of that. I think it would look like I think it would look very similar to what it looks like today. But throughout this entire part of this conversation, we've been saying like thoughts and feelings because really like I don't know like when I think about the biggest what ifs just in gaming history just overall, this one has to be up there as far as one of the biggest what ifs because it leads into the pinnacle of the console wars. I mean, to me, the pinnacle is when Xbox joins and you have the three systems that are all, you know, GameCube's not doing as well, but they're all doing fairly well at this time. So I just like I would agree with everything if I were to make a prediction, but it's worth saying that I don't know. So, motion controls. Um, is it a hot take to say I don't think this is a mistake?
Here's because I am also not as hot on this one as being a big mistake either because that's why I kind of justified it at the beginning of this by saying, well, I saw a lot of people mentioning it, so I put it on the list. But here's the thing that I will say. I think the biggest impact the motion controls have had is on how hard it has been to bring those games into the modern era and re-release a lot of that stuff. Like look at Skyward Sword. The HD version is better, but it still has problems because of how much the game relied on motion controls. And there's a lot of games I think from that era that we just flat out won't see Nintendo even try making because it's just so much of a hassle to convert the motion controls to a traditional controller. So there's going to be a lot of lost media from that time period. And I think that is the biggest downfall of the motion controls, but overall, obviously the Wii sold very well, no question about that. So I don't know. It wasn't a mistake. I don't think I don't even know if we can call it a mistake. I think it was them trying something, and the Wii still had some games that were traditional controls, so it was more of a choice that it's more of a choice that has modern repercussions than a mistake, I think.
So here's the thing, and I got a little bit frustrated uh researching this one or just thinking about this one because it made me think about like Facebook and Reddit discourse about gaming in general.
Hmm.
Um just because I don't use something or just because I don't really like it that much, I can't say it's a mistake because if it was a mistake, um, why does the Switch use it a lot? Because they they use it a lot. Okay, like for example, I don't like the use of it in Breath of the Wild. Some people love it for like aiming like your bow. Uh,
Hmm.
Pokemon Let's Go games and Legends Arceus both use motion controls. I thought it was enjoyable for a while. Then I turned it off. Some people love it. Mario Party,
Mario Odyssey, yeah, that's what I was gonna say next. Yeah, I don't know how
or
people
Mario
use those
Odyssey, yeah,
controls.
right. Mario Party, WarioWare.
Hmm.
And if you are a fan of Splatoon, uh, if you can get used to motion controls, I swear the game becomes so much easier. So earlier when you were talking about the Joy Cons, I think one way Nintendo has figured out how to make like a tactical game like this is through using motion controls. Because if you're trying to like be tactical using these like small, flimsy Joy Cons, it can be really difficult. So I must say, I don't think it's a mistake because it's used so much now and so many people use it. So I have to eliminate I have to take away my own preferences, I guess. My own like the fact that I never use it doesn't make it a mistake. Doesn't make it a bad thing. So I
Yeah,
would say it's not a mistake overall.
I feel like there's a scenario where they could have leaned way more into the motion controls, made them mandatory on everything, and it could have ruined them. But instead, they were smart about it, and they were like, "Hey, this is a feature. It's not something you're required to use. It's something the Wii can do. It's something the Switch can do, but you don't have to use it." And I feel like they did it the right way. Now, the path where this is an outright mistake would be like if it were, people would be talking about failures of systems if they were like, you have to use this. You know what I mean? Um, that would cause it to be a failure, and that would cause it to be definitely a mistake. But
Well,
they didn't do it that way.
let me set you up then because I'll let you cook on this one. Because when we talk about motion controls online, a lot of people bring up the same games or they bring up games they don't like. So, guys, there's a lot more motion controls than just Skyward Sword. I want to say that. So,
Yeah.
you want to cook on that because I haven't played Skyward Sword.
No, you're right, and I just feel like Skyward Sword was a bad utilization of motion controls. They wanted so bad to have the one-to-one sword play, they didn't care if it worked or not. I mean, Skyward Sword is almost like the Virtual Boy in that it seems like it was released before they got it completely working 100%. There's so many videos you can see online of Link's arm just like spazzing out because they don't know what it's trying to do. And like it's just an example of like that particular case. It was a mistake because they leaned on it so heavily, but they didn't have to do that. Look at the motion controls for Twilight Princess. Because they're not trying to do one-to-one sword play
Right.
in Twilight Princess, they work fine. You swing your
Right.
Joy-Con left and right, and he swings the sword left and right. That's the end of it. Oh, and I think you can do an up-down. That's it. Like they're not trying to do a complete 360-degree reading of how you're swinging it. And yeah, it works perfectly fine in Twilight Princess. I've never heard anyone, and that's the same. That's looking at two games from the same franchise. I've never heard anyone complain about the motion controls in Twilight Princess.
Yeah. And Skyward Sword is a result. That's a result of having an idea and building a game around that idea, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's more of a Link's crossbow training situation, except you got a bigger game.
yeah, it's like we have this technology. It's the hot technology. We could do this. We're doing this, and now we're building the game around this. And I wonder what conversations they had like while in development of like, what if some people don't want that? Like so yeah, I think like when I was looking up how like this game gets brought up a lot when talking about motion controls. And that's fine. Like it might not be a game that you like, but it doesn't make the technology bad. And this is just one of the things where I think Nintendo knows more than us. And if it was a technology that wasn't working or no one liked, we wouldn't have it in a system and like in multiple systems, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe one. Maybe they'll try it for one, like the we'll never have like a 3D screen again.
Yeah, and I'll
Like
say an example of where I feel like it was a mistake is the Xbox Connect. You know, that's a mistake. It's optional. It's not the whole gimmick to the system. Um, yeah, I've kind of said my piece here.
yeah, so I mean, I love that it's on this list. I love that we ranked it high and put it in the second round. But upon reflection, I think I'm more more frustrated than anything. I'm going with um giving up on giving up on PlayStation. I think that could be a legit mistake, which might have worked out for the better for the gaming industry overall.
Yeah, and it's something that could have benefited Nintendo had they handled it a little differently. We'll never know.
So that ends round number two, Kevin. We're down to the final four.
Oh yeah, you're right. We are. So, what is next week's topic? It's the Wii U, right? Versus
versus
the disk drive?
versus the disk drive. And
Okay.
then the other final four is Virtual Boy versus this week, giving up on uh
We can just call it PlayStation.
giving up on the PlayStation. No, I'm just making sure I'm saying my list correctly, right? Because Virtual
Yeah.
Boy won last week.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
So
Yes,
it's
yes,
pretty
yes.
much all
Okay.
failed systems in the final failed or never released systems in the final bracket here. And then we'll see who goes on to the final round, the first of the final round picks next week. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Who's got the best worst system?
So, did you have any time to mess around with our spotlight game this week?
Well, you can introduce our spotlight, and I gotta say, with like this game more than anything, it's like I feel like it's such a disservice to not have enough time. You need a lot of time to put into this game. I think more than any other game that we've played.
Gotcha.
Um, so yes, I did play it, and then I made sure to watch some of these like events online because I knew that I wasn't going to get to some of the late game ones. I'm jumping ahead. This week is Harvest Moon, and how about you take it away?
So yeah, we did both Harvest Moon games that are available on the system. They do have Game Boy games, so those might come at some point. But anyway, that we did the Super Nintendo version, which came out in Japan in August of 97, June of 97 for North America, 1997 on the Super Nintendo. That's got to explain part of why that cartridge is so rare. But anyway, Nintendo 64 version came out in February of 99 and December of 99 in North America. And the first thing that I want to talk about that I think is hilarious whenever Harvest Moon comes up is something that I always remember. I always talk about reading video game magazines back in the day, and I think it's funny that farm sims at this point have become their own overpopulated genre, because I remember every single review for Harvest Moon, and I mean every single one I read, the first few sentences contained the thought that was something to the effect of like, no, seriously, a farming video game. Like, no, but like it was such a mind-blowing idea. Like, really? A farming game? No, seriously, you know? So I always think that's funny that it's so commonplace now, when back then it was like, why would anybody play this? You know?
Yeah. Did you
Um
see the one that did you see the screenshot I posted?
Oh yeah,
I
I can read
posted
that
like
one. Yeah.
yeah.
It's so you posted something from Electronic Gaming Monthly where they said an RPG about farming, talk about a hard sell. But this epic adventure in agriculture is as fun as it is original. And that's for the Super Nintendo version.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, as you read that, Kevin, like, when you read it, it sounds, like, sarcastic in my mind.
Yeah.
You could write the same review today and make it
It,
totally sarcastic. Oh,
it would
like,
have a
"Oh,
different meaning, exactly. Yeah.
oh, a game about farming? Never seen that before." Because, yeah, there's like it's not its own genre. Like we have subgenres. I mean, it's got to be one of the most oversaturated genres, which is ridiculous because it's also requires some of the most time. So
hmm
I've said it before. Chances are, if you have a farming sim that you like, you're not playing like 4 or 5 farming sims. You're playing like one or two.
And my
I
one
think.
used to be Harvest Moon. I played every game in the series up until the 3DS, and I was just obsessed with this series. And they have varying degrees of quality, but Harvest Moon 64 was always by far my favorite one. The PlayStation one was pretty good too. That's kind of a remixed version of this. It uses the same sprites, but puts the characters in a different town and kind of gives the people different jobs. Like, for example, Karen, where's Karen? I don't know. I'm not going to be able to think of it all right now. But oh, here's a good one. So the police officer in Harvest Moon 64 is a mailman in the PlayStation version. They just use the same sprite, but they're telling a different story. Uh, anyway, um, yeah. So it's one of my favorite games of all time. One thing I also want to make sure we talk about is that it was rushed through development. The Nintendo 64 version, there was a lot of cut content from the game that almost all of it wound up in that PlayStation version. I guess they had time for that one. So the fourth channel on your TV, it only plays static no matter what you do. There were so many rumors back in the day of something you could get on this channel, but they're all fake. Um, Originally, that channel would have been a home shopping network, and you could order stuff, basically mostly for your kitchen, and they ended up including that in the PlayStation version. There was a second floor to your house that you were able to get at some point. They took that out. You can still get staircase that just goes up to your roof. um, they there was a friendship system with the elves that they put in the PlayStation 1, which still kind of works in this one, but you can't tell what their friendship level is at all. But they do. Originally, you were going to be able to basically like give them chores to do on your farm, which you can't do now. But if you get friends with the elves, they will feed your animals if there's a hurricane. So that uh that stayed in.
That's
There
good.
was
That's good.
there was a baby bottle tool that was cut. That would have. There's something that's left in the game where your wife asks you to help with the baby, and that's where you would have used the bottle tool. But they left that part in where she says, "Can you help with the baby?" and took out your ability to help with the baby. So that's kind of funny. Um, and like I said, with the home shopping network, you can get a kitchen in the game. Eventually, originally that kitchen would have been useful, and you would have been able to order all these things off a home shopping network that would have helped you make the recipes that the people in town give you. And as it stands, all you can do is get the kitchen, and the people give you recipes, but they just kind of go in a thing on your fridge, and you're not able to make the recipes. And originally you were able to do that. So there's a lot of other stuff, but those are just like the key ones that I almost wish they would make a remake of Harvest Moon 64 where it's like finished and all of this stuff is actually in the game, but no dice. They're not going to do that.
I mean, there's 19 mainline games in North America, I believe.
Yeah, it's definitely a flooded
between
market.
between Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons, it's just wild to think about because like Harvest Moon is such an influential game and they've released games like almost every year while the biggest farming sim, which was directly inspired by Harvest Moon, has only made one game. And
Yeah, that's a good point.
like and they just keep making that game better to the point where like it's hard to pick up other farming games sometimes. So I didn't play the N64 version. Before this, I've played the Super Nintendo version, and like I totally get the nostalgia for it, and I totally get the love, and I think I'd like to spend more time with just like the characters and the environment and some of like the fun events that happen in this game. But it feels so much like an original first nothing before it game that lacks so many quality of life features that just drive me crazy. Like I don't have patience for it. Is what I'm trying to say. Like give me a rucksack, you know? Like I don't want to like I hate picking up one thing and then taking it over to the other thing, and it just everything just takes too long, which is why farming sims that are inspired by Harvest Moon now have all those quality of life features. So
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say is I like it, but I don't have the patience for it.
it's definitely something that I've wrestled with in my mind of like Harvest Moon has been replaced by Stardew Valley at this point. It's really hard for me to go back to Harvest Moon 64 even though this is a game that's like in my DNA. Like I know every nook and cranny, and I've done everything there is to do in this game. I've done every single storyline. I've used every glitch available. Like my two favorite ones are that you can get there's a music box that's buried on your farm, and you get it fixed up in town, and you can give it to one of the girls you like. There's a glitch where once you give it to a girl, it's reburied on your farm. You can get infinite music boxes. So that's a way to like, get their heart meter up quicker. And another glitch I like is when they have the horse racing festival. If you max bet on every single horse and then just cancel, it still registers those bets, but you don't have to spend any of your money. So you can get all the horse racing prizes like your first year. So that's another great glitch to use to your advantage. But yeah, it's exactly what you were saying is like there's so many like it's so hard to only have 8 slots for things to carry. And to there's just so much of it. You can't save whenever you want. You have to go to bed and write a diary. You can't I don't know. There's just so much that Stardew Valley does that it's hard to not have anymore.
And the reason why we have it is because of Harvest Moon. So I get that. But like not having like I think the day cycle is way too fast for me, and not having the time, like not knowing the
You know,
time.
part of me has wondered if I'm part of if the reason I'm good at Stardew Valley is that I've played like 500 hours of this, and I'm so used to that short day cycle, and I can get everything done right away. And just like I'm like, you're almost like speed running each day to make sure you can fit everything in.
Yeah. Well, if anything, I might be minority, but I think Stardew Valley is too long. Like they have
Yeah.
they have a 60-second hour where in Harvest Moon it's like way shorter. It's like 20 seconds or something. It's way shorter. Uh so yeah, it's like I can appreciate it for what it is. And I think that's the most important. I think the music in the original is horrible. I don't it is what it is. It's repetitive. It's Do you have any opinions on the music?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to disagree with you there, but probably because you always have to wonder how much of this is just pure nostalgia because of me playing this game over and over and over again when it first came out and then over throughout the years. I can hear any of the screenshots I see from this game. I know all the music and I can agree it is repetitive. But I don't know. I love the winter music. I love that like downtime music that they have on the home screen. It's not particularly special or complicated arrangements, but I like them. So, but again, it's just because I played so many hours of this and it just reminds me of growing up and it reminds me of my teenage years. So, it's not like I'm saying that they're good. It's just that they're in my DNA.
Yeah, yeah. Again, like I love that we have different preferences on this, or we have different tastes on it. Does when you replay Harvest Moon 64, does it bother you how slow it starts? Like having the clear the field or whatever you do in the beginning, or does it
Um
feel slow to you?
No, it doesn't feel no. Probably because
No.
I'm going and expecting that. Yeah. No, it's just like it's something that I make sure I plan my play around and I'm like, okay, every night I'm going to work this field until I usually do it row by row. And I'm just like, I'm going to work until I can't work anymore and then go to bed. And then the next night, like you just have to make sure you're not going to bed before you've done everything you can possibly do. And in the Super Nintendo version, the night doesn't force you into the next morning. So you could literally work all night until your character runs out of energy. And that's something you definitely need to make sure you do in that version is utilize all of your character's energy every night clearing that field. Otherwise, you're just wasting it.
Yeah. Yeah,
The clock stops at midnight is what I'm saying in the Super Nintendo version.
yeah, I I think I've said what I need to say on this. I think, and I also think the Harvest Moon 64 be most likely due to how long it had in development. I think the characters with the overworld and background designs, I just think it looks rough. I think it's a very rough looking N64 game. Uh,
Whereas I want to live
but
in this town.
Right, right. And it's weird when I was playing these games, I couldn't help but think about Shinmu because of like day and night cycles
Ah,
and just kind of like how again like just how innovative it had to have been at the time, you know?
I
And
actually think the
well, Shin
PlayStation version looks a little rougher, but I don't know. That's just my opinion.
yeah, that could be very true. Yeah, that could be very true. But it's also just kind of a result of the time. Like graphically, I was thinking about games like Quest 64 or something like that. Um, but but yeah, I think like I hope my criticisms are fair. I don't hate this game. It's just that for me, with lack of nostalgia, I would have to kind of just move on from it.
Yeah, so our rankings are probably going to be very different
Y-
because
y-
This game is
Yeah.
so important to me. It's definitely going to stay very high on my list. Harvest Moon 64, I have ranked all the way at number 8 on my list. So top 10, it's below Link's Awakening and above Mario All-Stars for me. Very important game. And then the Super Nintendo version, obviously, it's the previous version. They improved on it, I feel like, for the Nintendo 64 version. So that's a lot lower. I have that down at number 21. It's right above Yoshi's Story for the Nintendo 64, and it's right below Mario Tennis.
I think that's very fair. Okay, so a new top 10 for you then.
Yeah, and I
I
think it's going to
put
stay up there for a while, to tell you the truth. It's really hard to break my connection. This is an all-timer for me.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I put Super Nintendo Harvest Moon at 19. That is below F-Zero X and above Sin and Punishment. I put Harvest Moon 64 at number 29, which is below Metroid 2 and above Dynamite Heady. And I'll say something on here. I've been waiting for a good time to say it for a long time. I'm pretty much done with farming sims. Um, because of Stardew Valley, and it's really hard to think there might be a game in the future that takes its place, but I've played lots of farming sims the past few years, a lot. And I've enjoyed most of them, but I always put them down and I always go back to Stardew Valley. And I'm starting to think that like I might just be done with this genre just overall because there's just too many games to play and I can't find one that offers anything else that has the depth or the number of play styles that you can get through Stardew. So that would be my take. The reason why I would not go back to these games is for that reason, and I think they're great games. I'll end with that, Kevin. I think they're great games.
Yeah, and I could totally see if you didn't grow up on these. Like I said, it's even hard for me to go back sometimes, just with how many improvements Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is king, and it's going to take a lot to dethrone that king. So let's find out what we're playing next week for the Spotlight game. Oh, this is the first time we've had this happen where the week we added a game, it showed up. So it proves that the random is truly random. And this week it picked Game Boy's version of Mega Man. So I guess we should do Mega Man and Mega Man 2. You talked about earlier, like we could break them up into chunks. And then we could see how it evolves a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. How many games can we do in 1 week? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 3,
Mega
I don't know.
Man.
3, I feel like we might have too much to talk about, but we can do them 2 at a time.
Let's
Yeah. Alrighty, so that is our show. We will be back next week to talk about Mega Man on Game Boy and Mega Man 2. If you'd like to give us your thoughts, email us at nintendotherapypod@gmail.com. Talk to us on Twitter at Nintendo Therapy. Talk to us on Reddit. We've got the subreddit Nintendo Therapy. And that is pretty much it. Keep in mind, we're Nintendo fans, not Nintendo experts. So we probably said a whole bunch of stuff that didn't make any sense this episode, and we're sorry for it, but we're doing our best. We will see you next week for more Nintendo chat. Bye.